Hey everybody, this is Andrew and Forrest. This is West Coast Live. Welcome to the show. Thank you all for joining us. Let me know if there's any issue with audio and that good stuff, because there has been lately. But I'm super excited to be here. I'm a little under the weather, and Forrest rocked it last week. And if you haven't seen that episode, go and listen, watch. Just he's as usual, just fantastic. And we were actually off camera. We were just talking about how it's kind of awkward to be solo on a stream. It just feels kind of lonely, and it feels a little like, Forrest, why don't you could you talk about it for just a split second if
Yeah.
you're interested?
So for starters, just making sure that my volume is good and all of that good
You
stuff.
sound good to me.
Well, you sound beautiful to me, buddy, and
Mm.
I appreciate the love for the sort of impromptu pseudo show last week.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you're a seasoned streamer, and I am not. So that was my first experience, just kind of staring into the abyss of a camera all by myself.
That is a good way
And
to
it
put
is
it.
really it's kind of a weird experience because I feel like other people have the vibe of you like talking to them, like you're kind of sitting in a room and they're having an experience with you like through a screen.
Yeah.
But if you're the person who's doing the talking, you're just kind of casting words into the emptiness, and
Yeah.
it's just a very strange experience. I basically felt like I was talking to myself for an hour, and I'm not going to lie and pretend that I've never talked to myself for an hour, but this was a uniquely serious version of it. So it's just kind of a strange, fun experience. If it ever comes up again, at least now I know I can do it. So that's
And
good.
I mean, it very well might. You never know. But also, like, to those of you out in what are we, internet land? I've always wanted to say to those of you in TV land, because I grew up on things like Buck Rogers and whatever, and
Sure.
you can't anymore. So, but those of you out there who ever if you ever want to do something like this, because I know an AlphaVo, I have to get back to you, but Alpha's got a thing that he just started doing. It's
All
a
right.
weird.
Can we get like a like in the chat or a comment if you saw one of the 87 posts that were made on behalf of Alpha's thing that he's doing?
Yeah,
Like that was some serious viral marketing right
that
there.
was
That was
crazy.
awesome.
I don't know about viral so much as it's just like bum rush. Just like a
Just
deluge
saturated.
of. There's
Hey,
Speaking
speaking
of
of
Alpha,
devil,
there he
there's
is. Alpha,
Alpha.
we're talking about your new project, and just like the volume that you have shot out
Oh
into the
man,
ether, man, it's
that was
incredible.
some grape shotting right
That
there.
was- and it looks really cool. I admittedly have not checked it out yet, but and again, before you showed up, I said I need to contact you. But the one piece of advice that I could possibly give to anybody who's interested in streaming or doing a show of any kind is go take an acting class, like right now, and learn how to talk to yourself. It helps tremendously. And I'm a professional actor and shit, and it's still, even when I'm alone on here, Forrest, when you're not here, it's it's still so like welcome. And so then I twirl a lot for a living. Okay, and Victoria's really cool. Did you ever see that
And
sketch with Chris Farley, where it's the Chris Farley show back on SNL, and he's like
oh,
one
I
of the
think I
most.
missed it.
Oh man, you would love it. The short of it is exactly what I just described. It's because Chris is such a loving and like jovial and social human being. The whole show is him like, and today we have on the show, Paul McCartney, which he was like in the Beatles and what, which is cool. Paul, you're cool, Paul. Okay, and it's just that it's so against type. Anyway, thank you all for joining us. If I could talk
Strong
about
segue. Strong segue.
in no way. Anyway is one of my favorite things, or nah man. Like it'll just diffuse whatever's going on. So anyway, a big thank you again to the Mad Reckless for sponsoring us for the show. And we have a new sponsor as of next week. Katie, I'm looking at you. But the Mad Reckless opens up July 26th right here in Portland, Oregon at the Star Theater. Tickets are on sale now. The link to buy tickets are up at the top. This show is going to sell out. If it already hasn't, actually, we sold a boatload even before we got the link. So today we're going to be talking about boundaries, essentially, and touch and communication, and a lot of topics that are pretty taboo for a lot of people, even though I honestly don't think they should be. So this is a great opportunity. And Forrest, you got the prompt, so would you mind kicking us off?
Yeah. Yeah, so we get questions from people every once in a while. They'll send a message to me or to Andrew or just to the show, kind of expressing something they've been thinking about or something that's kind of become an issue in their community. And we got a question from somebody who has a background in both West Coast Swing and Zouk, and talking about the touch differences between those two communities, like what's considered socially acceptable in the two of them. And it kind of spiraled into sort of a conversation between Andrew and me about that big topic that we run into a lot when we talk about this dance community, which is about sort of what's an appropriate way of interacting with another person's body. Given that when you step onto a dance floor, you are kind of inherently giving people permission to touch you.
Yeah.
At least to some degree. And then where we get into trouble is what is that degree? How much is too much? How little is too little sometimes? Given the kind of requirements of this dance technically, like to lead someone, you have to move them. And that's something that's really been kind of a theme in the classes that I've been teaching recently, is that, look, I think that there's this way that we kind of teach followers to be too afraid of connecting, and we teach leaders to be too afraid of actually moving their follower.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a way in which kind of, even on just like a psychological level, that's partially influenced by this other conversation that we have about like appropriate versus inappropriate touch. And so Andrew and me were just kind of bantering about some of the ways that, that dialogue in general is a tricky one. And so we kind of wanted to get into it a little bit on today's show. So if you have any questions about that, any comments about that, feel free to drop it into the comments. Feel free to message Andrew and me individually as well, if there's something that you would like to share. And I think that we'll just kind of get into it.
Yeah. Oh, and just a disclaimer, not that there's been an issue with this so far in the chat. The chat's been solid gold, but I do get some... Yeah, I get personal messages that are a little... They run the line of being kind of like... let's call it jerky, I guess. I don't know. Like, just make sure that like you double check your stuff and that what you have to say is constructive and that you're not shooting down others' opinions. But that's all I'm going to say about that. So, yeah, let's get into it. So you were talking about starting from zero. And I mean, I agree with you 100%. Like the way that most people teach connection on its own for a basic class comes off to me as sort of like this creepy hover hand almost thing. Like you almost negate the fact that you're dancing with another person. It's like you give people the mechanics of like, you touch here and you put a hand here and that is it. And this is your frame and this is where you live. And that's also, and I understand that being a tool, and I understand not everybody's comfortable with like, you need to be able to, accept another person's weight into your hand, and you need to be able to press into another person. That's intimate to a lot of people, but what we're inherently doing is intimate. It's not, again, it's the difference between that and romantic is like between, water and sand. It's very different. So
big difference.
Yeah. So let's do this. What do you typically tell somebody day one?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that for me, what's really good to understand is that the safest thing to do is to, as we were talking about, start from zero. And what I mean by that is that the first time that I ever have a social dance with somebody, doesn't matter how young or old they are, doesn't matter what gender they are, it doesn't matter if they've told me ahead of time, oh, I have this injury and it limits me in X way or not.
Right.
I do not do a hip catch with them. I do not dip them. I do not duck them. I don't run my fingers through their hair, like whatever it might be. Just start from zero. Like if you're just having a random, it's a little bit different in a contest where you have to kind of get after it in sort of a different kind of way. But if you're just having a social dance with somebody, by far the safest thing to do is to not do risky stuff. Like it doesn't hurt you to not do risky stuff the first time that you dance with somebody.
Yeah.
And then over time, of course, as you get more used to the person you're dancing with, it's reasonable to start doing more of those things that are more connected, that require more trust in the partnership, that whatever it might be. I mean, you might see two of the pros or two of the all-stars dance together late night at a convention, and they're like practically doing contact improv and rolling around on the floor because they've danced together like hundreds of times and they've established that level of trust in their sort of momentary partnership. Mm-hmm. And so it's really important to not look at that and go, oh, okay, they're doing it, so it's totally okay for me to do that with X random person. No, you haven't established trust in that way. So I think that that's kind of an underrated part of this
Yeah.
whole equation. Yeah, go ahead.
No, no, no. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
I like that. That is an underrated part.
Yeah. So like over time in all of your social dances, you're going to establish trust with the people that you're moving around with. So yeah, so start with zero, build with there. Then the question is what happens when something goes sideways? Because with almost every person that you dance with for any extended period of time, somebody's going to do a thing at some point that the other person doesn't like. And that might be being too intimate in some way, a contact point on the body that that person is not comfortable with. It might be just that you fall, or that they trust fall themselves and you're not there to catch them. Or it might be that you had a pattern that goes sideways and somebody gets their hand tweaked or something. Like bad stuff happens.
Yeah.
So the question then becomes like, how do you recover from that bad stuff effectively? For me, I just love saying I'm sorry. And we were talking about this a little
Yeah.
bit before. Like I love saying, "Oh my bad," or "Oh I'm sorry," or "Oh sorry that that hurt you." Because two things. For starters, you can say I'm sorry without quote unquote admitting fault, or without like saying that you're a horrible person.
Yeah.
Because you're just saying, "Oh I'm sorry that that thing happened. Now how do we adjust?" Right? And so that correction and implementing that correction, I think, is also a little bit of an underrated part in this process. So establishing trust, and then when something goes sideways, if it does, learning how to implement correction and being totally willing to go back to zero, I
Yeah.
think is really, really, really important. Just because it was okay for you to do a hip catch with one individual or in one dance does not mean that that will be okay for the rest of your relationship with that person.
Yeah.
And for the people who historically have been kind of problematic about that in the West Coast community, and there have been a few people over time who, were removed from the community or whatever it might be because they had issues with this. For me, the consistent thing about them was not about understanding what was right or what was wrong. It was about that willingness to implement correction and go back to zero.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to do that, then I think that everything becomes a lot easier.
And it'll solve all your well, not all your problems, but a great
A
many
lot of
issues in your life.
yeah, totally. Hmm.
Yeah, whether it's yeah, you get the idea. Streetcar writes, I was in a workshop. Also, I don't know how to pronounce your name, so please send me a phonetic thing. I love your name.
Yeah, I keep on messing that one up. It's a great one, but I never know how to say it in the chat.
Yeah, I don't know. So anyway, you always have such wonderful comments. So I was in a workshop with Diego and Jessica, and they made a semi joke. I'm paraphrasing. Get into close position. Do it properly, not like American close position.
It's super
And
true.
It's
It's
kind of
super
true.
true.
But that's the thing. Is like if I don't know someone, I don't want to get into a zook position. Like I don't want my pelvis against someone. Like, and frankly, like maybe it's just a weird thing with me, but a lot of people don't seem to have good either boundaries or hygiene. Like
Yeah.
deodorant or oils or whatever works for you is a thing. Make sure that you understand that your hygiene is not about you necessarily. It's about others. It's a big issue for me. But this whole thing of like, yeah, the common conception of like kind of how West Coast is, that we start way the hell out here and this is where we live. We're in open position constantly. It kind of leaves us, I find it kind of leaves a lot of us crippled when we get into closed position. When the night gets going, you don't really have a reference to return to zero in that position. You know what I'm saying? So like
Yeah, totally.
Delancey and I have been teaching a lot more of the awkward positions, like this, like if you're going to go for a hip catch, if you're going to go for like a close embrace, because that's my jam. It's my favorite. How to do it right, and that you need to accept someone's weight, and that you need to like breathe and calm down and not make a big to do about what you're doing. Because especially if you don't know the person, like you're saying, or maybe you're just not that familiar with their body or whatever, you don't have the kind of permission that's permitted there from being friends or a partner. Just making like this, is this okay? Like that kind of makes it almost worse. Making your thing nonchalant and like you're saying, being willing to go back to zero and have the conversation. It's an absolute must. And Elizabeth just joined, who is a tango dancer and who I'm sure could facilitate some really good stuff there, because that's the day one there. Don't you learn? And I am not a tango dancer. I've only taken classes and been awkwardly felt up. It was a good night. Have I never told you this? Okay, so I don't know this, and I got
No,
the
I'm
rules
ready
wrong.
for this story though. I'm super ready.
This is one of my favorite stories because, like, the reason. Okay, We went out tango dancing here in town, and Portland has one of the biggest. I think we have like the biggest community outside of Argentina, or something crazy like that. Uh, which makes me wonder why I don't do it more. But the point is I was out dancing some years ago, and there was a young lady who followed very closely to the traditional rules, I guess. And like, if you make eye contact with somebody, you are dancing. So it was sort of like
Yes, yeah, that's a thing I've learned
that
for
is a
sure.
thing. Okay, so
Yep, that's totally a thing. We're like, sorry to interrupt, but the like the tango ask,
yeah,
like in West Coast, you walk up to somebody like a normal human and you say, "Hey, would you like to dance with me?" Like like people do.
like people do.
In Argentine tango, the tango ask is basically like you're sipping your wine across the room from somebody and you're just gazing out upon the ballroom, and then you kind of look at them and you go, and now you're dancing. And if you don't want to dance with them, when they look at you, you just go.
No. See, but then that's playing it coy, and I'm like, I thought that was a cat and mouse thing. I don't understand the rules.
Yeah, it just to your point, they're like very different. Different dances have different limitations on what's appropriate. Different dances have different ways to ask. I think that we, in general, have like a pretty healthy conception of how to gain consent in West Coast swing.
See, that's
which
funny
I think
because I don't think we do.
Okay, well, we should talk about that.
Okay.
That's like a great thing to talk about. The way that I mean that
Yeah.
is that just we have like, I think in general, a general consensus that the way you ask somebody to dance is that you walk on up to them, you ask, "Hey, would you like to dance with me?" And then they say yes or they say no, and then you dance or you don't. And like that's a pretty direct consent way, and it's sort of hard to misinterpret that. And that's sort
Yeah.
of what I mean. Is there something else that you were kind of thinking of?
No, not necessarily. Well, a little bit of something because things change. At least maybe I look for this kind of stuff, and maybe that's why I'm noticing it. But I love awkward human interaction. So what are you gonna do?
Sure,
But like,
yeah.
like it's late night, or maybe you're just a little more socially awkward, or maybe you're just tired. Whatever the case may be, we're all like that at some point. And it's the hand. There's no ask. It's just like the assumption that this person is
Sure,
gonna.
sure, sure. Well, I hate that. That's the
It's
worst.
it's the worst. The
If I
other
could
one is
kill one thing in this dance immediately, the like either the grabbing to ask someone to
Yeah.
dance, the hand, I would just unless like they're your BFF and you just know each other and like you do the kind of look and okay, cool. Yeah, there as Tony is saying, there are a lot of moments where leads just like grab and drag a follow onto the floor. And that's just the worst. And
Yeah.
so that's not what I'm speaking to. I think we have way too much of that in West Coast swing. I just mean in general, like our sort of
yeah, like the rules that are
our
set
basic
down.
practice around asking. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's good.
exactly.
Whether or not people follow those rules, I think is a whole other conversation.
Yeah, totally. The other one that weirds me out is like I get guilted a lot. Like I like saying no personally because whether it's just like I'm exhausted, I just danced 6 songs in a row, or maybe I just don't want to dance with that person for whatever reason. Who cares really? But it feels like high school all of a sudden again, and it's like I'll get asked to dance and I'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sitting this one out." No impetus on the other person. They're like, "Oh, well, I would really like to dance with you before the night is over." It's like, yeah, okay, I would love to. He's like, well, just don't forget about me. It's like, oh, okay, thank you. Or like straight up, I get
Yeah,
this a
it's a
lot.
tricky spot to be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need to like go into super amounts of detail or whatever, but it's just like instead of just letting it be cool that it's this conversation thing, like, and letting it be cool that no, I don't want to dance right now. It has nothing to do with you, or maybe it does, but who gives a damn? It's this like,
Yeah.
I need to make this more because this is the most important thing in my day, or like whatever. I don't know what goes on in people's heads. But being cool with things not going your way is a very important skill in life, especially in a social
Yeah, totally.
atmosphere. And
Yeah, no, I co-sign everything that you're saying here, and I think it's particularly bad for the pros, and it's part of the reason
yeah.
that they often have sort of a complicated relationship with going out social dancing at night.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Andrew Sinclair,
Bring back dance cards.
Maybe. I sort of have a tortured relationship with the dance card. I'm not really sure how I feel about it, to be perfectly honest, but maybe that's just me.
It makes me want to vomit. It's awful.
There you go.
I hate them. I hate them. I truly hate them. I'm sorry. I don't like it to feel like business unless I'm actually hired, and that's part of the job. It's socially,
Yeah.
no. Just wait and be patient.
Yeah, and I think that people should be able to say, I mean, look, two things are true. The first thing that's true is that I think that in general, I take a principle where if somebody asks me to dance, unless I've got a real good reason not to, I'm going to dance with them.
Uh-huh.
And I just kind of concede. Maybe they're a newer dancer. Maybe they're, difficult in some way to dance with. Whatever. It's 3 minutes. We're all good. But at the same time, it's my body, and I get to kind of choose what to do with it here.
Yeah.
And there is this weird thing where attendees at events often feel like they have ownership of the bodies of the
Yeah.
people who are part of that event, and it's just not true. And people need to kind of get over themselves a little bit here. These professionals are not hired to be your chew toy. They are hired to teach a workshop. Like, that's it. That is the limitation of their contract, is they teach a workshop, they do their judging, they compete in the Jack and Jill if they choose to do that, or maybe a show if it's part of their contract, and that's it. That is their only requirement.
Yep.
Any and all social dancing that they do is out of the goodness of their heart and out of their individual desire to social dance. So we need to kind of internalize that a little bit more thoroughly, just kind of as a community in general.
Yeah. And that goes with just randos, not just pros, just everybody. Like,
Sure, yeah.
it's, yeah. Anyway, and I feel like I skipped over the end of Shrikar's comment. He said, are there geographical differences in what is considered intimate or acceptable? That's interesting to me because we talk about that a lot. I don't know. Is it different for you in different locations you go to? Because I haven't been to a thing in a while. I go to
The only place where I found it different was in Europe, in France,
Okay.
where they dance multiple dances in a row with somebody much more often.
Sure.
And this was actually something that was included in the initial question that we asked, where apparently in Zouk, I wouldn't know, I don't dance Zouk. This is all apocryphal, so take it for whatever it's worth. Apparently it's much more common to dance several dances in a row with somebody. And you also see that in Argentina, where you dance like 2 or 3 dances in a row often.
And there's even a
and in West
song
Coast,
that tells you the breakup, right? Is it the Cabradita?
yeah,
No.
I am not a professional. This is again a question probably for Elizabeth.
Elizabeth?
But yeah, first apparently there are 3, and it's like the arc of the relationship where the first is like
What?
the getting to know you, and the second one is like the we're in it now, and the third one is like the sad goodbye or something
The
like
sad
that. Like
goodbye.
it's very out there. Just again, this is all apocryphal. But anyways,
I like it.
slowly returning to the point.
Mm-hmm.
In Europe, it was much more frequent for people to dance at least 2, if not more dances than that, in a row with each other. Dancing 2 was like extremely common. Dancing 1 was pretty normal as well, but dancing 2 extremely common.
Okay.
Yeah, so apparently it's even more complicated than I'm letting it on to be with the Argentine Tango thing. We're gonna have a special show called the Argentine Tango Hour, and that'll be a whole separate thing apparently.
I love it.
Anyways, yeah, no, there are
There's a
definitely
plum
regional
in this
differences.
man's hat, and if you smell the perfume, then you have to have a child with them. It's the magic of the dance. Didn't you know?
If somebody could clip that, that would be great.
Don't worry.
That would just be great. I want
there's
someone to
no-
clip that video clip and post it probably to West Coast Swing Awkward Moments, but really just to the internet, and that would warm the cockles of my heart. That's
I'm
all
actually
I'm saying.
surprised I'm not on West Coast Swing Awkward Moments more. A guy can dream. Who knows?
It's true, yeah.
Who knows? Somebody videotape me at a convention the next time I'm there. You're gonna have some gold. Okay, let's get back to the thing. So I do notice some differences, but like regional, not so much as it is like depending on the venue that I'm going to. Like the most polite venue I go to are bars, believe it or not. Like just where normal ass folk who don't train in dance go to. Like I know that doesn't make any sense. The least polite place I go is a club. And then West Coast, like a West Coast venue falls somewhere in between where there's like a nice healthy dose of like meat market and just like, excuse me, miss, I'd really like to get to know you, or sir, would you like to dance? Oh yeah. Ooh, this song is great. You know what I mean? Yeah. You would think that where liquor is provided constantly, everybody would just be like, woof. But something about the blues bars here in town, everyone's just like, the atmosphere is like, we're here to have a good time first, and I'm not going to infringe upon that, with rare exception of 1 or 2 skeeves. But it's yeah. If you haven't gone out to a local, like a real live music venue, not a DJ'd thing, a thing where you are responsible for representing the bar, if that makes any sense, do it. You know, like you're
That's
almost
really,
there. It's yeah. You were saying. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
no, you didn't. I was trying to bring it back to your individual experiences of this kind of feature. And I don't know, have you had a this is kind of on the spot. I didn't ask you to prep this or not. I'm just sort of
No, what's up?
wondering. Have you had a moment with somebody on a floor where you led a thing and you thought it was pretty innocuous and they were like, "Hey, that I would prefer if you not do that in the future," and sort of how did you respond to that? Like not some incident where somebody was just like way out of line with it, just an
Yeah,
incident where some kind of expressed a preference and you then took that preference and did something with it.
yeah.
Like how do you deal with that moment?
I'm sure that I've had inappropriate moments at some point. But like in terms of maybe I touched somebody on a hip they didn't want to or whatever.
Sure, yeah, yeah, just
But
like a mild but
I
pretty
just
normal.
I just go like, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, cool. And then
Yeah.
I just adjust. But like my favorite is I danced with my friend Emily a long, long time ago, like 6 years ago or something, and she had a broken shoulder. And so
Oh,
you just
geez.
didn't have the option of using one of her arms. So came up with a lot of really cool stuff. Like sometimes when somebody gives you a quote unquote handicap or like just a limitation of some kind, it opens you up to a whole lot of creativity. So
Yeah, totally.
yeah, dude, being willing to admit like, oh, this isn't going to go exactly how I thought. Cool. It lets you figure out other artistic BS and makes the other
Yeah, so
person feel good.
totally, absolutely. To kind of like wrap this part of the conversation, maybe because I think that we've more or less kind of expressed our opinions on
Yeah,
it. At least
yeah.
I would love to, I would love to like hear other opinions if other people have them on this topic. But
Sure.
just for us, it's really about a couple things. One, it's about just walking into a dance with the assumption, with the starting point that I'm gonna try my best to respect this other human's boundaries,
Yeah.
and that willingness to start very low, and over time with a person, as you get to know them, as you get used to dancing with them, you can kind of reasonably ramp up from there and be cautious. Like I think that it's okay to be cautious in this particular instance.
Oh yeah.
um, then if something does go sideways, admit fault, say, okay, my bad, or, apologize without admitting fault, maybe. Um, and then you can kind of reset the expectations of the partnership and sort of move forward from there.
Yeah.
Finally, actually ask people to dance in general. Don't just like grab their hand, respect people's personal space, all the kind of normal stuff that we talk
I
about.
wrote a song
Uh,
called "Don't Be a Rude Douche." I'll sing it to everyone at the next convention I'm at. It'll be wonderful. But
it,
that's for
it's a
them.
great song. The
It's
only
very Bob
unfortunate
Seger.
about doing a show like this, I mean, I don't know for sure because we're actually kind of the show is getting more views than I think either of us sort of initially anticipated it would get.
Yeah,
But I know that like this kind of message that we're giving right now is not necessarily designed for the 30 people who are listening to this show
not
right
at
now.
all. Yeah,
Like the people who are in the audience right now are not the people that, at least in my experience, I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe somebody else had a different experience with someone,
John
but
Kirkconnell.
I know, yeah, I mean, geez, John, that guy.
Always
Basically, like,
touching me and
let's be honest, Andrew. John only touches you in ways that you like.
well, to
Like,
be fair,
let's be
I
frank with
ask for it a
ourselves.
lot from John.
Yeah, you
So,
ask him politely to do it, and then he's Canadian and very
oh no, I'm
polite, so he
very
does.
aggressive with John. I feel
Yeah,
comfortable
but
with
like
that.
the point is that this squad of 30 people are not the people who need to receive this message.
Yeah,
But I would hope that the reach of the show at some point would be such that it would be reaching people who maybe do need to hear this message. Or even more importantly, it would reach people who would understand that the vast majority of the community has really got their back here.
yeah,
And that's what I think is really the important message to communicate. To understand that, look, if something goes sideways in a dance that you'd have, and this is sort of I don't know, the kind of important takeaway here, understand that you can tell people and you can ask for help. You can express your boundaries. You can tell someone, no, that wasn't my preference. And if it's problematic, if it continues to be problematic, you have a ballroom full of people, generally speaking, who are more than willing to do whatever appropriate measures need to be taken in that moment.
yeah,
So I think that that's kind of the important thing to understand, is that the vast majority of people in the community, 90, 95%, 98%, 99%, really kind of get this as an issue. Um, So, anyways, that's kind of my closing thought on it. As, of course, we share howtofeelupyourdancepartner.com.
It's my personal
Jeez.
website, and
Yeah,
somebody's
no,
gonna
I
take me
mean,
wrong with these tips. But yeah, but even
it's kind
though
of funny.
I want to make sure there's a couple things. While these 30 some odd people or whatever who's ever live today may not be our audience who should hear this shit, you guys are the ones who should spread the word, and I'm sure some of you do. Alpha just self-plugged. Good job there. That I just gave a lecture about this. LOL. We all know about this. Ha ha ha. It's good that you're being constructive there, Alpha. Thanks for the snark. And then, but it's true. Like, we all know this. Go tell people. Make this not a thing anymore. I like it from just like a technique standpoint. Get used to talking about your boundaries so you can learn what you can do as a dancer. Wonderful.
Yeah, maybe that's like a good segue here because it's definitely been a consistent topic in any of the teaching. Again, like I'm not a professional West Coast swing instructor. I don't pretend to be one. But in the teaching that I have been doing recently, like that idea of getting comfortable influencing your partner,
Yeah.
I think has been like a huge topic. I don't know if you've had any experience with that. I know you've been doing a lot of solo dancing recently and a lot of work with that
Well,
company.
it's still,
I don't know if it comes up there as well.
well, yeah, we do partnered work all the time.
Great.
And as I am I'm like the prop in our show. Like I lift people and
You're the male prop.
yeah,
Yes.
I'm the only guy, but more importantly, like I'm the only bass for a lot of the stuff that we're doing. So like I have my friend Chantel, there's several moves where like she's on the ground, I have to lift her up above my head and then twirl her around, and it's a whole to do. And that, like, you want to learn partnering real quick, you go and learn like a pas de deux class. You go take pas de deux. It will
Sure.
whip your ass. It's a
Yeah,
whole other
definitely.
thing because you don't have the option of like, is it okay if I'm here and it's like this? And I'm just talking in terms of technique, because I think we teach technique pretty incorrect a lot of the time, past a certain point.
Sure.
Like when you're starting to get into the all-star, advanced all-star level, you need to learn how to use your muscles and how to feel another person's musculature and use it to your advantage. Because if you want to do a lift, or if you just want to connect with somebody on a more intense song and you're complaining that they were rough, then learn to protect yourself. And that's like 90% of what you learn when you're doing lifts like that. You know, if you go half-ass and you take it nice and slow and you're like waiting for everybody to be okay, it's just not going to work. You're going to get hurt, or you're going to drop somebody, or you're going to punch someone. Like, yeah, you know, there's a nice happy medium, and I just don't think we've reached it yet. But that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, just
Yeah. Yeah. No. I mean, so just speaking to what you were talking about, real
yeah,
quick, you mean that in the partnering that you're doing for this show, which is a more sort of solo dance focused show, you're really getting the experience of like bodily moving a person through space.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't really get that so much in West Coast Swing because of how we kind of teach connection. Is that more or less what you're saying?
yeah. It's sort of. We teach. I like the connection that's taught throughout West Coast up to a point, but yeah, when you get to I'm just saying that when you get to a certain point, what you've already learned becomes so stagnant. You need to be able to do the other thing as well. You know,
I think that's super fair. Yeah.
that's all. I'm not
Yeah.
saying
It's
you're
just
wrong.
tools in the toolbox. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Always bring it back to the toolbox.
I like those toolboxes, man. It's one of my favorite metaphors. Andrew Sinclair had a comment about an idea for a workshop at event, talking about some of these kind of body-related issues. I think that's an interesting way to approach it, or certainly like a Q&A or something like that, as something on a Friday saying, hey guys, here's our deal.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on right now about like safe space policies and posting like appropriate behavior for dancers and so on at events. I think that it's a great thing to have a codified set of like, here's what's appropriate at an event. At the same time, and this is kind of what we were talking about before, Andrew, and this is just my opinion, so just one guy, but my real personal opinion is that most people basically understand what's okay and what's not okay. It's in the example that I gave to Andrew, is that in most legal cases, the question is not like what the definition of murder is, it's finding out what happened.
Yeah.
And I think that what we're doing a little bit right now in terms of how the community is tacking around this issue is that we're really trying to define inappropriate rather than getting good at diagnosing when and where something inappropriate happened.
Yeah.
And I think that second issue is like a way larger issue than kind of defining what's good and what's bad. Because again, most people basically know what's good and what's bad. So I think that anyways, this is a long way of saying that like a codified set of here's what's okay, I think is great. I think there's totally a place for that. But what we really should be focused on is an event expressing, hey, here are our principles, here's our reporting policy, here's who you go to if you had a bad experience, whatever it might be. And that's the place where I think that we can really, really take big leaps as a community.
Yeah, and that's actually a very common topic in teaching circles, like actual academic circles right now. And for the past 10 years or so, because you're doing it wrong, this is why you're doing it wrong was like the standard for over 60 years for the average like elementary through high school teacher. And lately, a decade, I guess, if you can call that lately, it's shifted into what you're talking about. It's like, let's actually figure out like how to fix this and let's have the discussion on what went wrong. Yeah. Rather than just, here's the stigma. You're an evil person.
For sure. Katie asked a question about teaching better connection and technique from the start. And do you have a thought on that?
Do it, I guess. It's hard because it's subjective.
Yeah, that's the thing, right?
Yeah, I like to get people as smushed as they can. Not like inappropriate, obvious. Not like put your hoo-hoo dilly on them, but like, why do I talk like this? Okay, so Delancey and I teach a lot of weight transference and control right off the bat. We get people comfortable actually moving a person or being moved by a person, both lead and follow. And that always works better for me to get used to a person than it does the standard, like, you're going to step back, you're going to do this, and it's going to happen because I told you to. Like, it just doesn't, that's teaching you a framework. It's not teaching you how shit works at all. You need to learn the physics. You need to learn about anatomy. And you can do that in a really easy, digestible form.
Totally. I'm just going to note that we definitely have another shirt that's going to be coming out soon, titled Hoo Hoo Dillies.
Well, that is copyrighted.
That's a bestseller. It's
that
copyrighted by Andrew Slack.
No, by South Park.
All day.
You never saw the episode where they try to find out who Cartman's dad is? Well,
I admit that I've seen like 5 episodes of South Park in my life,
you are not missing a damn thing. Oops! Shots fired. Shit.
Yeah, seriously, shots fired. Okay. Anyways, but in terms of like teaching technique at an early level, I think that a lot of the issues that we talk about are frankly aimed at more kind of intermediate advanced dancers.
Sure.
Some of this,
but that's what the show is for.
But that's what the show is for, exactly. Like, if you just walked in the street and are walking into your first West Coast swing class ever, you're probably not, like, tuning into our show necessarily.
Yeah.
So this is kind of designed for people who are probably teaching at a slightly higher level, competing at a slightly higher level. And I do think that something weird happens in between novice and all-star. And I actually hadn't thought about this until now, so I'm glad. Thank you for saying that, Andrew, because it kind of triggered me to think about this.
Okay.
In novice, we teach people like the basics of how to move someone.
Yeah.
We teach, all right, so you step on this foot, and here's how you lead a partner, and here's what you do with, like, your arm, and here's the experience of leading and following, and here's what connection is. And then in All-Star, we really get into these like very concept-based workshops around like connection, and then Robert teaching resisted release and whatever it might be. And in between the 2 points, in intermediate and advanced, it's like a barren sea of pattern workshops.
Yeah.
Just stretching like as far as the eye can see. And I think that's really strange. Like, I think that the most important thing to learn as you're advancing level is not how to do a pattern. It's how to connect better. It's how to move a partner better. It's how to manufacture artistic movement better. Yeah. So I just think it's kind of odd now that I think about it, how often sort of intermediate and advanced workshops are focused on patterns, because they really happen. It seems to happen that way like all the darn time.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was just kind of reflecting on that. Yeah, I think that we could definitely do a better job of teaching more advanced partnering in intermediate and advanced,
Yeah.
personally.
Well,
Because I feel like all that stuff gets saved for All Star, and that's like
yeah,
not where it's get saved
where
for.
you've already built all your freaking habits, and then it takes even
Yeah,
longer
it's
to
like,
break out of
oh,
it.
so okay, I've been doing it wrong for 4 years. Thanks for telling me, guys. Like honestly, I had the experience of getting to All Star, and I felt like that was when I started learning how to dance.
Yeah,
And everything I had done until then was just like kind of patching over holes and stuff.
yeah. I
So
mean,
I was the least bad person, in in the
yeah.
advanced division or whatever, and we were all terrible, and I just happened to be the least bad one. So, anyways,
It's yeah. Where is it? Well, actually, that's a good topic for the second part. But I talked to Brandy about this off and on. Speaking of which, I have to call her. She essentially says the same thing I do, that you and I have talked about, that many people seem to preach, I guess. But it's, I teach the same thing to a beginner, like a day one beginner, that I do to an all-star. It's the same mechanics. I don't like, you can go and learn patterns, you can go and learn a trick on your off time, but if like real coaching is the same for every sport. How do I use my body effectively? You know, if it's boxing, how do I throw a better punch without blowing my shoulder out? In what way do I turn my hip into it? If it's gymnastics, which is basically all dance and or martial arts or just West Coast, like how do I move myself effectively? How do I use the tools that I have effectively? Not just, ooh, a new tool. Neat. You
yeah,
know?
absolutely. I mean, understanding like I think that in general, and I was kind of talking about this a little bit last week and the
Yeah.
sort of individual whatever when I was just kind of rambling about techniquey stuff. Um, the For me, I think that we do way too much being a tape recorder in how
Yeah.
we teach this
Oh
dance.
yeah.
Here's what I mean by that is that like we're really good at like teaching regurgitation.
Hmm.
And I think that that's kind of to speak to a larger issue, part of the issue that people have with like all stars these days, where they're like, oh, they're just out there flailing around, trying to dance like the champions dance.
Kinda.
Well, yeah, like that's literally what they're doing. Like we're
Yeah.
literally replicating out there. We're seeing what wins, and we're putting it into our brain tape recorder, and we're shooting it back out.
Yep.
Or we learn a step and we put it into our brain tape recorder, so we replicate the movements. We just replicate that pattern and say, oh, okay, so therefore that should win. And I just think that that's kind of a fallacious way to teach it. It's much more complicated to teach somebody, all right, here's a position in the body, and here are the options that you have once you enter into that position. And here's how you can move your body from point A to point B, and here's how you can interact and move your partner's body from point A to point B. That's a
Yeah.
much more difficult way to teach, but I think that it's a much superior way to learn at the end of the day. John's making a point about
Yeah.
how in North America we are very pattern focused and we finally start teaching connection in all stars, but overseas there's much more of a focus on leveled workshops and kind of teaching those more advanced concepts starting at an earlier level.
Yep.
And he's totally right, and I think that that's one of the reasons why the very advanced dancers over there have in general been performing better than the very advanced dancers over here when they all happen to get into a same contest with each other.
I still love the dialogue that happens when like France shows up to a competition, or Russia for that matter.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, ah, fuck, the French kids are here. It's always
I
like
know.
this
Oh
lament,
God.
like, oh, I gotta
Yeah.
go against Maxence. Ugh.
Like you should. That's the
Good.
whole point.
Yeah, Tybalt's here, or Thibault, whatever.
Tebow.
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 Tim Tebow.
Tebow.
Okay, that's how I'm gonna remember.
Tibbs.
But it's
Yeah.
and in general,
Just call him Tibbs.
Tibbs, Mr. Tibbs. I'm sure he'll love that with a guy who he
I
doesn't
know
know.
he's gonna be like, "What the heck? Why are these people screaming Tibbs at me?"
Who is this sweaty asshole? No, I don't like it. I do not like him. That's not. I don't know what accent that was. So
You just became Russian for a second. It's
it was
okay.
a lot of Eastern Europe. So anyway, yeah, you go to France. I spent a lot of time in France when I was doing Lindy Hop, and it's just different. The arts are treated differently everywhere else on the planet, especially in that part of the world. Joy, to be able to move your body or use yourself in an artistic manner. As opposed to like, this is like a thing that I do that I'm good at. There's all this pressure here on the average, and I've been doing this since I've been an actor and a dancer since I was 11, and it sucks. sometimes. I love it. I wouldn't trade my history for anything, but it really sucks. There's so much pressure. You have to do it right, and you have to do this thing, and you have to, and you go to, there's a whole section of the year where Parisians, French people in general, get time off to go and do whatever the hell they want. It's a mandatory, like, you will go and relax. You're gonna love it, and everybody, because it's just you have this time. Everyone takes up a hobby. Everyone I met at the last training camp I went to was good at, like, professional at something. It was bizarre. All these really insanely good Balboa and Lindy Hop dancers, and then, like, oh, there's one person who's a contortionist because she had nothing but time. Or there's a guy who decided to become a gourmet chef. He does not do that for a living. You know? Like, I want to know, I want to have I don't know if we can do this as a show, but it'd be cool to do, like, a weekend or something, if that's even feasible, about what makes you happy. Why do you do this stuff? Why are you an artist? Why do you think of it as an art? Is this a sport to you? Like, really, like, helping people break it down and get to the nitty gritty. I don't know how we would do that as, like, this show.
Sure. I mean, the whole question of, like, to take of the many great things you said there, to take one tiny slice of one of them, the question of, like, art versus sport in this dance, I think, is a really interesting one. And it was funny that you kind of named this. But I would just recently had a conversation with Ben McHenry and a couple of other friends about, you know, is this dance an art or a sport? And for me, it's both.
Yeah.
And I think that it's kind of hard to say definitively that it is an art or it is a sport. I think that both of those arguments are, frankly, a little black and white in a pretty gray area.
Yeah.
For me, it is when we are contesting it in judged competition, it's kind of inherently a sport.
Sure.
When we are producing it and as a showpiece, as a late night dance, as a whatever, it's definitely an art.
Spart.
Yes, Spart, as John is saying it, it's true.
So that's a shirt. I want that shirt.
Spart. I would wear a Spart shirt.
I would.
I'm just putting it out there. I would wear a Spart with, like, a picture of a stick figure, like, painting as they run in a race. I am right there. I am right there with you, because that's literally what we're doing, you know. And I think it's okay to say it's both. You know, I don't think that you necessarily need to, like, draw a harsh distinction on it.
Yeah.
Can you judge art? Well, we judge art all the time. We do it in the Olympics every 4 years. So, you know, I'm sort of reticent about the idea that, like, you can't judge art. Like, there are lots of competitions judging art that exist around the world, guys. Like, painting gets judged, ballet gets judged, ice dancing gets judged. So I don't think that that's, like, a hard reason that it's not a art or not a sport or whatever it is. It's a weird combo of the two, and part of the struggle that we have in the community sometimes is, like, deciding how much we should be an art and how much we should be a sport, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, but I think that's what makes it pretty.
I agree. And honestly, I don't think there's a whole lot of differentiation between art and sport. You still put in the same amount, in terms of, you put the same amount of time in if you want to be good at it. You have to learn this sort of, you know what I mean? You kind of see where I'm going with this. Like,
I totally see where you're going. There's so much skill and training involved on both sides of that coin, whether you're a football player. Like, I don't think that anyone would describe, like, football as an art.
I would 100%.
Okay, maybe you would describe it as an art, but that's kind of my point, right? Like, even if you start looking at, there is an art to dunking.
Yeah.
Like, literally a performance art to it. Like, is the dunk contest art or sport?
Yes. Spart.
Yes, exactly. It's a sport, right? So that's kind of my point.
God, I hope this catches on.
Spart.
Spart.
It sounds like something that it sounds like the image that was made of me by Emily Chang with, like, the middle of the face chopped off and
it's
my name
favorite.
brutalized.
It's my favorite. That's how a couple of my friends knew you.
Mm.
And then I showed them, like, a real picture of you. You're like, oh my God, he's, like, really handsome. Why did you show me that first picture? It's like, because it's awesome. Because
the first picture
it's art.
Is easily the best picture of me. So I'll ask a question.
Okay,
I'd
sorry.
love you to answer, Andrew.
Oh, okay.
And it's, do you think that there is a different Spart factor in Jack and Jill's versus routines? And I think that's a really interesting question, and I don't have a good answer.
I do. I think
okay, hit me.
I think ultimately no. However, Preparation speaking, obviously, yes. You have a
Yeah.
lot more time to figure out your quirks and what works, what doesn't. You have the opportunity to frankly elevate a routine to a much higher theoretic level. You don't have the spontaneity that so many people love about Jack and Jill's, obviously, but yeah, that's the difference. I think that yeah, that's easy.
So do you think that because there is that additional preparation and additional kind of because we've removed the spontaneity factor, like the whole intrigue of West Coast on a certain level is that you're being judged on something that's purely spontaneous,
Yeah.
like random partner, random song, random connection.
Yep.
Great, go. Um, for a routine, all of that randomness kind of gets removed. You
Yep.
know your song, you know what you're supposed to do, all of that. So would you say that that makes it more a sport or more like is that what you're kind of trying to say? Is that the
No,
sporty factors are increased?
no, I think it's still the same, but you have different factors within it.
Okay.
Let's use the snap heard round the world thing because people shit their pants when
Yeah.
I had anything to say about it last time. This should be fun a second time. Like a lot of people were saying, the reason that worked is because everything leading up to it was sort of leading to that one specific moment. So you knew there's one structured moment that was coming, but everything else was improv, and you had to make sure that everything was going right in order to hit it right. And anything could have gone wrong when that was going on. So there's this sense of like, are they going to do what I think they're going to do? Is this going to be like that? And there's a little bit of that in a routine, but you already sort of know what's going to be hit in what way. It's the same thing, but it's different. I know that's not like a concrete way to answer a question, but there's just different factors. And ultimately, I think it amounts to the same thing.
I definitely think they're extremely different skill sets.
100%.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and this is just reflective of something that we've said many times at this point, which is that different people are good at different things.
Yep.
And it's okay for us to hit a point. Like, we're hitting a point as a community where we have enough people. It's still a very small community, but we have enough people involved in this dance at a high level that we can start to say, your strengths are here, your strengths are here. Like, there are people who are wonderful routine dancers who are not necessarily great Jack and Jill dancers, and vice versa. And I think it's okay for us to just like be okay with that and just kind of express these as being different skill sets.
Right. There's a question you
yeah,
from Shrikar. Forrest,
Oh.
can you explain a bit further as to why is it a
Yeah, okay. So I think that what he's speaking to here is that I'm kind of setting these up as a binary. It's either like an art or a sport,
yeah.
and therefore we should like decide which one it is or change our training based on that. And I'm actually not really saying that. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's a problem teaching it as an art or a sport, Shrikar. I think that regardless of whether we consider it an art or a sport, we can more or less do the training of it the same way. I think that what would really change if we decided, no, this is an art, is how we judged contests would
Yeah.
change. Like, I think that that's the big thing that would change. I think that how we approached contests would change. I think that whether or not we did contests at all would potentially change.
Yeah.
So I think that it's more of like a high level organizational question, if that makes sense, than it's a question of like, how do you do this dance?
Yeah.
Which I think is more or less the same regardless of those two things. I think that if we decided it was like a hardcore sport, things would get a lot more codified. I think that if we decided it was a hardcore art, we would care less about contests. And
Yeah.
I think that that's kind of the distinction between the two.
For sure. And you use the example of the Olympics, that just look at a figure skating competition. They're bizarre to me because I, as a spectator, knowing very little about the sport or art or whatever, I can watch that and just go, they're dancing. It's magical. Oh my God, he threw her in the air. Versus, they know every trick that is supposed to come out. And we sort of judge things on a much lesser but similar level with, swing content. Did they do a whip? Do they have triple steps? Or is this like an interpretive dance thing? So,
Yeah, I mean, I guess that what you're kind of saying, Andrew, which I think is really true, is that we kind of judge the sport elements, swing content, and then we judge the art elements, choreo and a routine. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't perceive to have the 100% for everybody. I have things that I really like.
Sure, yeah.
And actually, Sinclair here wrote, do you think that judging changes from sport to artistry as the level increases? Yeah. I also
I think it does. And that's a great
100%.
point.
Yeah, I don't think we need to say a ton about it, but just look at an all-star competition and the rando crap that comes out. Look at a champs and the stuff that they do. It's just, you could make the argument that a lot of it is quote unquote not West Coast or whatever that means. Because frankly, we do a lot of interpretive dance and there's a lot of random lifts and there's a lot of like it's
Charades and the whole thing.
charades. Yeah, it's very different. So yeah, the higher level you get, the more you get to play around and the more you get to take out the shit that you're supposed to do, so to speak.
Yeah. And Shanti, I think, is kind of summing this up really nicely, which is the better
Yeah.
the technique, and you can view technique as kind of an element of sport, I think it would be
Oh yeah,
appropriate to say.
yeah,
The better the art. Like, and they can actually work together, and they're supposed to work together. Like, the whole, like, I mean, guys, let's just kind of cut to the chase here.
Yeah.
The whole reason that we learn stuff is so we can represent our art better.
yeah,
That's it. Like, that's the point.
Yeah.
The point of learning to do a great sugar push is not like, now I know how to do a great sugar push. The point of learning how to do a great sugar push is that it facilitates all the other artistic movements in this dance so much better.
yep,
And it allows you to represent your art outside of whatever that sugar push happens to be.
yep,
So that's really where the focus is, right? As we acquire those tools in the toolbox,
Hey.
everyone take a drink, we become more able to represent the kind of truth of our art. And I think that's great.
yep. I like Joel's idea. Want to see a doubles figure skating
This
event?
is what it's all about.
Yeah, have a doubles figure skating event and have them draw random partners with the other dancers to random music. Everyone would die. There would be
I was
like,
about to say, if they didn't have blades strapped to their feet, I would be super on board.
yeah, if you want to understand the kind of momentum and power they're working with, go look up figure skating faces. You are welcome.
Now, what I would like to see is something like, gosh, I forget the event. Was it at Liberty? I forget the event it was at, where for the Invitational Strictly or Champ Strictly, whatever it was, they had the finalists do like a impromptu routine together, where they all drew a song at random, and they had like an hour and a half to choreograph a routine, a quote unquote routine, to that impromptu song. Something like that for ice dancing could be dope.
That'd
Like,
be really
super
cool.
into that. Yeah.
I won't lie that if I ever had to do that in West Coast, I wouldn't. That sounds like
You would cry.
that sounds like my nightmare.
Oh, Swing Cooper. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. I hate that stuff. For me personally, it's cool to see what other people come up with.
Sure. It's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And there were a couple of dances that came out of that. I think that it was Benji dancing with Tashina is one that I remember. It was Jordan was dancing with Victoria ? Was that it? Jordan and Nicole, maybe? I think it was maybe Jordan and Nicole. I forget. There were two dances that I really kind of jumped out to me, that I thought were just awesome routines, like purely on their own merit.
Yeah.
Benji like throwing a bunch of flower petals into the air just killed me. So, anyways,
Sure, why not?
yeah, Royston and Glanville, they had a great one as well.
That makes sense. Many decades ago, that's how country couples competitions worked. Man,
Oh.
I'm too light in the ass for that. No thanks, guys. More power to everybody who's able to come up with something like that. Hell no. Give me my hippie, like, let me feel the music and I am gonna do okay because I have technique backing me up kind of thing. Rather than, did we hit this on 4? No? Well, we lost. I'm sorry. There's your paycheck. Stacy and Hugo, is it? So one of these, this is what we should do.
Apparently, everyone had a freaking great dance in
guess
this
the
contest,
whole
and I
thing
only
was-
saw a couple of them. Now I got to go back and watch all of these dances because I'm super intrigued. I mean, it was
Yeah.
such a cool concept.
Can
And
we-
again,
can we
as Andrew
make
is saying, you got to be real brave to do this.
Oh yeah. Can we make a board? I don't know if this is a thing. Can we make a board where people can post like their favorite dance clips or something? Is that a jam?
I mean, we can just make a West Coast Live thread like immediately after the show
Yeah, let's do
saying
that.
share the cool stuff. We'll just do that.
We'll do that. Okay. Yeah.
Apparently, Alyssa and Royston just like crushed it because that is what everyone is saying. I gotta rewatch these videos.
Did I tell you I got the weirdest interaction the other day after saying like Royston's Jack and Jill dancing doesn't necessarily move me.
Yeah, I sort of figured you might get some responses for that one,
Most
buddy.
people were really cool. Like I actually had a couple of really good
Okay.
conversations about it. I was shocked,
Well,
and
good. I'm glad.
yeah,
Yeah.
but there was one gentleman.
Hmm.
He was not mean, but he did lecture me
It was
about,
declarative.
yeah, like he wasn't being a jerk. He was just like lecturing me about why Robert Royston is the greatest thing that's ever happened to West Coast swing. I was like, all right. I
Well, I mean, you can
I
make a
didn't
real
say
argument
he
that
was
he's the most
bad.
successful Jack Hill answer ever. Yeah, and exactly, like that's the point. Is that what I think that was kind of lost in that communication that you made is that it's not like you were like Robert's bad at dancing. I
No.
mean, come on, guys. Everyone knows that Robert's just really effing good at dancing. Like
Yeah, he wins the
no one is arguing
things.
this to the contrary. He wins the things. He has a genius approach to Jack and Jill's. And for the record, I really enjoys Jack and Jill dancing. Like I think it's great. But like different people can have different preferences, and it's okay to have a different preference. Like no one's gonna get hurt. The whole point of the spart, the whole sparting of it
Smart.
is that you get to have a preference. This is not just who beats who in the 100-meter dash. Okay, so just like be cool.
Yeah, or you can do the come at me bro approach, and that'll probably not go over that well.
Sure, yeah, that's a little different.
And to clarify, I value everyone. I may not like necessarily certain things and in terms of preference, but everyone's fucking cool. You don't get to any position, whether that's novice, like that takes balls or gumption. That's a better word. Like it takes a lot of bravery to get up there and put yourself out there for people to judge you, because that's what it's there for, or even just get on
Yeah.
just to show off to other people in some fashion. So if you do a thing, I probably love you in some way. However, if you disagree with me, let's have a conversation. Because I think, like, Forrest and I have talked about this, but the way that the show has sort of become is that he's like, Forrest is good cop and I am bad cop. I say stuff that kind of apparently pisses people off or it gets a rise, and Forrest makes it beautiful
Yeah.
and eloquent and like ropes it back. And I like the dynamic a ton, which just means I get to be Sipowicz from season 10 of NYPD Blue, when he was actually like a decent human being. That's fine.
Absolutely, buddy. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
I love it. Okay, so people just keep posting things that they really like from competition. That's
All right,
fantastic.
we'll get this thread together. We'll make it happen. I think
Yeah,
that's kind of a good note to wrap it
I
up on.
agree. Yeah. So I want to thank you all for joining us again today. And as per the usual, Forrest, you're the man, and I love you. And
Love you too.
yeah, we are in the process of getting guests. So again, if there's somebody
Yeah.
that you are really interested in having on the show, please let us know.
Mm-hmm.
We'll make a thread for that too. Who would you like to see, or topics that you would like to have covered? Because there's certain things that are obviously very near and dear to Forrest and I, and we have a tendency to repeat ourselves. But that's because we find them important. So if there's something important to you, if there's a person important to you, let us know. My name is Andrew Slack. This is Forrest Hansen. Somebody post. Oh, do this for me. If everybody could find the Forced meme, or better yet, the Birth of Man meme,
Oh, jeez.
and just make that your cover photo, I'd really appreciate it. But that's it from us. This is West Coast Live, and go and have the best day that you've ever had. We'll see you again.
See you guys.